you're just taking money out of your 401k whenever you feel like it, that is not a reliable income spending plan for retirement. One of the questions that I get all of the time is, hey, how do we turn that 401k that I've worked so hard to save into a steady or a reliable income stream in retirement? So in today's video, I'm going to break down one of the many ways that you can do that. So when we think about taking money out of investment accounts, one of the things that comes to my mind first is how much risk is in that account, and are we subject to sequence of returns? Now, sequence of returns is a big fancy word for volatility in the market, meaning if the market's going down the same time that you're taking dollars out to live on, that can really get ugly in a hurry. And so we got to have a plan to where we don't have to worry about what I call being a forced seller in a down market. And so if we think about this, I always liken it to a home, all right? And one of the strategies is what we call a bucketing strategy, okay? And so when we think about that, that bucketing strategy is simply making sure that we have the right dollars to pull from at the right time. Okay, so when I think about it, I liken it to building a home. So if we think about building a home, the most important part of a home is the foundation. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not a good artist, so you're gonna have to just go with me on this house. All right, but the foundation of our quote unquote home needs to have principal protected, meaning we can't lose money, but then we need to also be able to try to get reasonable rates of return out of those dollars that are invested in the foundation. Now, lots of different ways that we can invest money in the foundation. My goal is we can't lose money and we can get reasonable rates of return. Tons of different tools that we can use there. I don't really care what tool we use, but we need to have some dollars there to help us with this sequence of returns or being a forced seller in down market. We all know the market's gonna go up and down. If we're taking money out the same time that the market is taking it away from us, that can get ugly in a hurry. So we need a portion of your dollars down there in the foundation to where we can pull from when the market's down, where we're able to get from point A to point B to point C. We believe in the market, but what we have to have is time in the market. We got to be able to get from one point to another and not be a forced seller in down market when you're taking money out. How much do we need down there in the foundation? That's completely dependent on how much income you need and or how much money you have. Let's pretend that there's $1 million that we have in that 401k, and we've just kind of willy-nilly been taking money out of that 401k whenever we feel like it. That's probably not a good plan, because at some point we'll be a forced seller down market. So let's also pretend that, you know, we've got 60 grand when it comes to income. And let's pretend that we're trying to spend $100,000 per year. That means we've got a $40,000 gap that we're gonna need to rely on that $1 million to produce for us. And we're gonna need to be able to take dollars out of there in a way that won't get us in a forced seller down market situation. And there's actually some structure and some reasoning behind what we're doing. So if we had $1 million and we needed about 40,000 a year off of that, I would probably try to have about 3 to 5 years of that $40,000 down here in what I call the foundation of our home. Principal protected, reasonable rates of return. I don't care what kind of tool you're using. I just think I would like a couple $100 grand at least down here in the foundation that we can pull from if we need it when the market's down. So in theory, if there's a few $100 grand there and we need 40,000 a year, we can pull money from there for 4 to 5 years before we have to worry about going to our more market-driven accounts, right? So historically, getting from, you know, one high in the market and then the market falling apart and getting to the next high is in that range of several years, or it can be. Now recently, it's been a lot quicker. But the point here is if we have several years worth of income in a bucket that's safe and invested fairly safely, we're taking that sequence of returns risk off the table for the most part. I like to think about things on a risk scale right here, of course, from 1 to 99. 1's like cash in the bank, 99's as risky as you can get. That 200,000 that we just said is a 1. It can't go down in value. So we still got 800 grand to do something with. Now this is where we can start to think through how much risk do we want? Like what's your risk tolerance, right? I think there's 2 ways to look at risk. One is just mentally or emotionally. How much can that $1 million go up and down before we start to freak out and make maybe bad decisions? And the other way is just like, all right, for your plan kind of tactically, how much risk can we have and not have to worry about something bad happening, okay? And a lot of times, those are 2 different things. I know that risk in this house that I'm building and whatnot, there's quite a few details involved in this, but what I'm gonna do is we have this thing called our toolkit, and there's a lot of different resources inside of it, one of which talks specifically about risk and sequence of returns. And if you want to kind of grab that and get some of the highlights out of this video, it's down there in the description below. You can grab that whenever you feel like it. So what are we doing then for the rest of the dollars? We still got 800 grand. Depending on your risk tolerance, the walls of our home, maybe we put, for today, we're just gonna put 400 grand there because it's easy math to just divide the 800,000 that we have left in half. The walls of our home, those are going to try to insulate us from those big drops in the market. So maybe we're gonna actively manage those dollars a little more, not to try to get to the market, not to try to get it to beat the market, but to try to get it to smooth out the ride from point A to point B. When we think about it on a scale from 1 to 99 when it comes to risk, the walls of our home are maybe like in that 30 to a 50 range, whereas the roof of our home maybe goes from that 50 to that 99 range. The thought process here is, you know what, we've got a couple $100 grand down there in the foundation. That's gonna get us pretty far, assuming all we need is $40,000 a year. Then what happens is, as we spend through that foundation, we can just go ahead and refill it whenever the time is right. When the market's really high and we want to take some gains off the table, we can pull some gains off the table, put them down there in the foundation, and just continue to rinse and repeat to deal with this sequence of returns issue. Now, we still got 400 grand left. I'm gonna put that up here in the roof. Those are dollars that we could be very passive with. Buy some things and let the market do its thing. I'm a believer in the market. A lot of people are believing in the market. It's gonna go up and down. You gotta have the stomach to ride it out. Recently, it's pretty much been going straight up, a few hiccups here and there. And so understanding how much risk you have, tolerance, I guess is the word I'm gonna use, but it's kind of a word that, I don't know, I don't like the word, everybody uses it, but how much risk tolerance do you have can really swing how much money we have in the walls and how much money we have in the roof. Because some people understand the market, they believe in the market, and they are like, we got time, let's put it all in the roof. I know I've got those few years of income protected. Let's put the rest all in the roof and let's really swing for the fences when it comes to growth. Other people maybe are a little more cautious, and maybe they have some bigger expenses coming up down the road that we need to plan for. Maybe they need a little more money in the walls that's a little safer, that's not gonna be as volatile, that they can get to for either those expenses coming up, or it just smooths the ride out for them. Maybe not getting those big returns, but still getting decent returns without the big bumps in the road. And that may make them more comfortable. So when it comes to creating a steady income from your 401k, there's so much more to it than just, I'm gonna take money out of my 401k. Because if that's your plan, then we probably will get in trouble at some point in the future and become a forced seller down market. What I just walked you through is what I call a bucketing strategy, but I like to explain it in the form of a house. And that's kind of investing 101 and how to create income. And we need to be at least getting on that level. So if you are that person and you've been taking money out of your 401k just kind of willy-nilly, and you're like, man, I didn't know that I maybe could be a forced seller down market, that might hurt, but I don't really know how to, change that myself. And you want to talk to us, our team, one of our advisors, happy to do that. There's a link down below where you can grab some time on our calendar, and we can walk you through what it might look like, or what your investment home might look like when it comes to setting some sort of a plan and a structure up to getting you income in retirement.